Did I just find a way to make briskets more juicy and tender and completely avoid any risk of dryness? Offset smokers create very dry convective heat, and I live in a dry climate, so I've often wondered if there's a better way to add moisture to the cook chamber of an offset smoker so I can get better briskets. So in this video, I'm injecting steam into my offset smoker to see if I can get juicier, more tender, and better briskets. Maybe this is a revolution in barbecue, or maybe it doesn't do anything at all. We're gonna find out in this video, so let's get smoking. So why am I doing this experiment? Well, there's 4 reasons that I can think of off the top of my head. The first one is that offset smokers produce a ton of convective heat and are naturally very dry with a relative humidity that is not really optimal for smoking meat and keeping it moist. For example, Modernist Cuisine says that the optimal relative humidity for smoking is usually 70 to 80%, but in my tests, I found that the relative humidity in my offset smoker is around 1 to 5%, which is a lot lower than 70 to 80%. Now, in some Texas barbecue restaurant that's using a 1,000-gallon smoker and has 35 briskets on it, you may be getting more moisture in that environment, but with my small offset smoker with just 1 brisket on it, that's how dry it is. Second, dryness at the early stage of the cook can result in a dry brisket because the brisket cooks unevenly and loses too much surface moisture before the brisket is hot enough to start pushing out internal moisture to rehydrate the surface faster than it dries out. Even Aaron Franklin, aka Barbecue Jesus, acknowledges this in his book Franklin Smoke, and he recommends starting at a lower temperature, spritzing the brisket often, and using a water pan to help avoid this. Third, elevation has an impact on relative humidity. I live at a relatively high elevation of 3,500 feet above sea level, but if you go to a barbecue restaurant in Austin, Texas, for example, they're a lot closer to sea level and the humidity is a lot higher as a result, so I've always wondered if that has an impact on the dryness of my brisket. And finally, existing methods of adding moisture seem to be insufficient in my experience. Many pitmasters recommend using wetter seasoned wood with a moisture content of around 20%, starting at a lower temperature and then ramping up gradually, using a water pan, spritzing often, but despite using all of these methods, my briskets still seem to dry out really quickly at the start of the cook, so I feel like I need to go nuclear and just try injecting steam directly into the cook chamber. If that doesn't work, then I'll have to go back to the drawing board and figure something else out, but for now, my hypothesis for this video is that a higher relative humidity in the cook chamber is going to result in a juicier and less dry brisket. So, moving on to the experiment, I'm rubbing this choice grade brisket with my brisket rub that I'll be commercializing for sale later this year. If you want to be notified when it comes out, there's a sign up form in the description section below. Then I'm heading out to my Oklahoma Joe's offset smoker and I'm starting up my handheld steamer. It's just a cheap steam cleaner I bought from Amazon. There's a link in the description section below. It's low temperature and low pressure, which means it's not really good for what it's supposed to do, but it's perfect for injecting steam into an offset smoker. I'm now drilling a hole in the offset smoker above the firebox into the cook chamber and inserting the steam cleaner through the hole. And that's basically it. It's now going to inject steam into the smoker, and all I need to do now is keep the reservoir tank filled with water, which is kind of a pain in the butt because I need to refill it every 30 minutes, but this is just a proof of concept video, so it's fine for now. Now I'm lighting my firebox with my grill gun. I'm just running pure wood splits for this cook with no charcoal because I just don't have any. And then the brisket goes on the stack side of the cooker with a large water pan close to the firebox with some standoff so the hot air can go up and over it. 4 hours later, I'm opening up the smoker and whew, look at that brisket. It looks much darker and more moist looking than my briskets normally look at the 4-hour mark. A lot darker and a lot more moist. I also noticed that the temperature was much lower than normal at around 225 degrees instead of my normal 250 to 270 degrees that I get with this size of fire that I'm running. But nonetheless, the brisket was cooking just as fast, and I think that's because the added humidity was pushing temperatures down, but still cooking the brisket quickly because it was inhibiting evaporative cooling, and the thermodynamics of steam just tend to cook things faster. Now, at the 7-hour mark, the brisket looked like this, which is crazy for just 7 hours into a cook, and I started probing it with my Chef's Temp Final Touch X10 instant read thermometer. I'm really loving this thermometer, by the way, and I'm using it a lot on my brisket cooks. If you guys want to pick one up, I'll link it below. And surprisingly, the brisket is already probing at 190 degrees internal after just 7 hours at 225 to 250 degrees. Again, that's super crazy, and my briskets never look this dark at 7 hours. Normally, normally it would take me about 12 hours to get to 190 and to get to this level of darkness at a much higher temperature of around 275 to 300 degrees. So I removed it from the smoker to wrap it. But before we get to wrapping, I want to thank Chef's Temp for sponsoring this video. The Chef's Temp Final Touch X10 is a super fast thermometer that gives accurate readings in 1 second or less. I've been using it for close to a year now, and I'm really liking it for its fast, accurate readings. Fully rotatable probe design, a magnet so I can easily stick it to my fridge or my smoker, and this is really cool, a hold button so I can reach back into the smoker, take the temp of a brisket and hit the hold button, and then look at the thermometer and the temp is still there. Such a simple feature, but it's so incredibly useful. It's also IP67 waterproof, which is great for me because I'm always getting grease on my thermometers, so running it under the tap to clean it is a huge bonus. And it's got a super long 3,000 hours of battery life, which again, I've been using it for close to a year constantly, and it's still going strong. So if you guys want to take your barbecue game to the next level with a premium instant read thermometer, I highly recommend the Chef's Temp Final Touch X10. Click the link in the description section below and use code STBBQ15 to get 15% off any product on the Chef's Temp website, including the Final Touch X10. All right, let's get back to the video. So, taking the brisket off the smoker at 190 degrees internal after just 7 hours, I'm now wrapping it with tallow and clarified butter in some butcher paper, and then I'm wrapping it again in aluminum foil, and then I'm going to hold it for 18 hours at 150 degrees Fahrenheit in my sous vide holding chest. If you guys want details on how I built my sous vide holding chest, I'll link the video below in the description section that has some brief details on how I built it, and you can also join the Hero Squad tier on my Patreon to get access to more detailed step-by-step videos on how I created it, also linked below. All right, guys, it is the next morning, and I'm gonna grab the brisket out of my holding chest here. Woo, steamy. Let's open this up. Guys, I am really excited about this. The brisket looked absolutely amazing coming out of the smoker. It hit 190, 195 internal after only 7 hours. Usually it takes me 12 hours, but the bark still looked super dark like I usually get at 12 hours. When I probed into it last night before I put it in the holding chest, it was also really tender. It felt really good, even in the flat. So I'm hoping that that translates into a really good brisket after the long hold period. I'm really excited about this. I really want this to work because I've never got this good of a result in an experimental video like this that's way out there and something that I've never done before. So I'm hoping this is kind of revolutionary, but it could totally suck. So we'll see. Oh no. That's not good. Off to a good start, Steven. Luckily, these Dalstrong knives are very sturdy. All right, let's open this guy up. Feels pretty good. Actually, the flat feels a little bit tough. Kind of worried about that. Let's dump this out here. Here we go. Look at that. Wow. Really nice bark. Meteoric bark. Very dark. Darker than I've ever probably gotten before. This is insanely dark. Okay, let's remove this brisket from the butcher paper. Oh man, this brisket looks amazing. Oh God. Okay, I'm gonna slice into it right about here. Right down the middle. It is slicing very nicely, guys. And I'll give you guys a look here. But before I show you guys, a viewer recently asked me if I could show the brisket before I slather it in the board tallow. So to that, I say, yes, of course. I'm always open to feedback, and I'm not afraid of showing you guys my brisket without slathering it in oil. Here's what it looks like. That is what it looks like when it just came out of the holding chest. There's no oil on this. Super juicy. This is a choice grade brisket, guys. No secrets here, except for the long hold, maybe. And years of experience. And here's the flat. Also looking really good. Really good. Better than most of my briskets. Okay, I am going to put some oil on here. And I'm going to start with the point, because that's my favorite part of the brisket. And we'll cut off some burnt ends. Slicing really nicely. We'll chunk these guys up. This brisket is slicing beautifully. Okay, guys, there is the point. So that's where we're going to get our primo slices from. I can already tell this looks freaking amazing. So let's slice this guy. Just get this board tallow on here. I just like to put the board tallow on because it prevents it from oxidizing. This is looking really good, guys. Okay, I'll go one more slice in, just because I want to be super decadent. Oh my lord. I'm excited. Okay, here we go. That looks absolutely amazing. Let's do the pull test. Again, this is the point. Pulls apart perfectly. Oh, guys, I'm excited. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. More, please. That is extremely smoky. That is the smokiest brisket I've ever tasted. That is turbo smoky. Wow. Weird. Okay. Something's going on here, guys. Something is going on. So we do have good fat cap rendering here. The fat cap is rendered almost all the way down. Got some nice caramel colored fat cap. I'm going to slice into the flat here. And we'll see how that's looking. Looks pretty nice. Let's pull this apart from the bottom, from the actual flat here. Yes. Yes. Yes, please. Okay. Let's taste this. Perfect flat. Perfect point. Perfect brisket. Amazing brisket. Can't even believe it, guys. Absolutely amazing. So, wow. Wow. Wow is all I can say. Let's keep cutting into this flat a little bit. I'm going to see if the very end of the flat here is kind of dry, because most of my flats are a little bit dry on the very tip. So I'm wondering if this kind of steam injection assisted method has prevented the very tip of the flat from drying out. Okay, we're getting to the very tip of the flat. This is what I usually either, I don't know, throw out or I make it into chili. It's usually pretty dry. So let's get pretty far into it. And we'll see if one of these teeny tiny slices is any good. So I'll pull that apart. Even that slice right next to the end of the flat is really good. Let's keep going here. So I'm going to taste the very tip of the flat. Still kind of dry, but very edible. Usually the very tips of my flats are not edible at all. And then this is just one slice in from the very tip. This is it, guys. This is the secret. I'm thinking like something's going on here. I would actually serve this up. I would serve this up with my briskets, and this is like super close to the tip of the flat. It's really tender. It's really nice. That's great. So I've effectively increased the yield of my briskets because I'm not having any waste anymore. And lastly, I'm going to try a burnt end. So good. So good. Wow. All right, guys, conclusions on this brisket. Does this steam injected or steam assisted method produce a better brisket? Based on this experiment, yes, 100%. This is the best brisket. Literally, it's the best brisket I've ever made, I think. I don't think I've ever made a better brisket. Maybe I've made a better brisket that was like a prime grade or a Wagyu with way more intramuscular marbling, but for a choice grade brisket, this is the best one I've ever made, hands down. Why is it the best one that I've ever made? Well, first of all, the flat was not dry. Usually when I cook my offset smoker briskets, the last couple inches of the flat get really dry and tough, almost jerky-like, because the brisket is so dried out in that smaller, thinner area of the meat. But in this case, I almost had 100% yield, i.e. I had almost the entire brisket that I could serve up to my friends and family, whereas normally I would slice off the tip of the flat and just save it for chili or just throw it out or something. So there's more moisture retention in the brisket for some reason. It could be the long hold method that I use, but I think it's because we injected that extra water and steam into the cook chamber. The second thing I noticed is that the bark was a lot darker. My theory behind that is that smoke attracts much more effectively to moist meat. And I think that because we weren't drying the brisket out so much, with that convective air coming from the firebox, we were allowing the smoke particles to attach better to the meat, and that's why we darkened up the bark. And also, I got more smoke flavor. This was the smokiest brisket I've ever cooked in an offset. It was almost approaching a little bit too smoky, but I could definitely taste the smoke flavor. And that's not just my theory, by the way. It's well documented in Meathead Goldwyn's book, in Modernist Cuisine. A lot of other scientific sources, they have all found that smoke attracts more to moist meat than dry meat. The third thing that was better about this brisket than my normal briskets is it was much more juicy. It felt like it had more water content in it. And I think that's because the brisket cooked more evenly. The point and the flat got up to a similar temperature at the same time, whereas in my normal cooks, the point will go up a lot slower than the flat will. So I think that evenness of cooking helped it. I think that because there was so much moisture in the cooking chamber, we were preventing that typical evaporative cooling that would happen over the course of a brisket cook, and not as much moisture was escaping from the brisket, so we got more in the brisket as an end result. I guess one thing I should have done is probably weighed the brisket before and after, and then I could have compared it to a control brisket to see what the moisture loss is, but just anecdotally, it seemed juicier, and that's my theory for why it's juicier. So guys, this experiment has kind of turned my thinking on brisket on its head, because I'm now thinking, what if the secret for all of these Texas barbecue restaurants is not in the rub or the type of brisket or the quality? It's simply that they're closer to sea level than I am, or their climate is more humid, or it has more moisture in the air, or they're just using wood with a higher moisture content that's adding more moisture to their cookers, or they're using bigger water pans, or maybe in 500 and 1,000 gallon offset smokers, you just have a more humid and moist environment. My thinking is kind of going in that direction now, whereas what I thought previously was, you know, it's all skill and experience and the seasoning on the pit and the rub they use and a whole bunch of other secrets. It could just be moisture content in the air in the smokers. And I think there's some science to back this up. In Modernist Cuisine, it talks extensively about having the right moisture and relative humidity content when you're smoking meat. And in industrial processes, when they're smoking things like sausage and pepperoni sticks and things like that, they carefully control the humidity because they know it has an impact on the final yield of the product, and it prevents it from drying out, and it has an impact on how the smoke adheres to the surface of the meat. So I think what I've been doing when I'm smoking briskets in my offset is I'm smoking it with way too low of a relative humidity level, even though I have that water pan. And I think increasing that relative humidity level some way, whether it's with wetter wood or a bigger water pan, or in this case with steam injection, you're going to get better results. And that's my working theory right now. And based on this experiment, I think it's true. I'm really excited about this, guys. I'm almost to the point where I'm thinking, like, should I patent this, or should I create a product that is made for offset smokers that injects steam into the cooking chamber? Because it just produces such great briskets. But I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, I don't have the expertise, I don't have the money to do that. But if any of you guys do have the interest, the time, the money, the expertise, the resources to put out a product like this, I think it's an opportunity. I think it's a real opportunity, because I don't see anything out there like this right now. And it does have really great results. And I think, you know, it's a B2B element as well, because I think a lot of restaurants would buy something like this to control the humidity in their offset smokers. So think about it. And if anyone does end up going down that road, feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I'd love to answer any questions that you have. I'm going to be doing some more experiments with this because I got such great results here that I'm going to do it again. You guys can obviously tell that I'm super excited about this. So thank you so much for watching, guys. If you want to get more involved in the Smoke Trails barbecue community, consider joining my Patreon. I'll link it below. I'm going to be adding some more private videos on my Patreon at a specific tier level, with some tutorials on how to build my sous vide holding chest to hold brisket at a steady 140, 150, basically indefinitely, for less than $100, $150, way less than getting a commercial holding oven for multiple thousands of dollars. You can also follow me on Instagram. You can join the Smoke Trails Barbecue Nerds Facebook group. You can just like, subscribe, leave a comment below. That all helps me and supports the channel. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video, and happy smoking.